Alright, time for some MegaPipes for the swampy swarms. So what we're looking at here is the kit bash from concept. I took this, separated it into pieces that make sense in a way to put together like a modular kit, and wrapped it all into a blueprint. And today I want to give you a quick run through how the tool is used in the most efficient and comfortable way. So in order to get started, we go to Swamp Pipes, and there is a blueprint. There is some folders, data, materials, meshes, all not too interesting. Let's have a quick look into meshes. This is where all the single pieces live that the kit is constructed of. We can drag them in, use them just as as standard actors. Just put it all in here and then assemble it. But of course there is a nicer way. So we can use a tool that pre-configured a lot of stuff for us in order to make the life easier. So let's take the blueprint, drag it into the level, and what we get is a pre-assembled section of the pipes. We're gonna go to the details tab here of the blueprint that we just placed in the level, and what you can find here is a custom tab or a custom section. That's the way I always do it. Whenever I put functionality into a blueprint that is not provided per default by the engine, I create a section that I call custom, so it's easy to find, easy to see. If I go to a blueprint, okay, this is all regular engine chisel, but this is the stuff that is used for the particular tool and the particular task that the tool is supposed to fulfill. So have a look what's going on here. First two lines we got some read-only values. The idea behind is as follows. One segment consists of a start point, which is where the pivot is located, and of an end point, which is where the next section should be attached to. So if I copy this section, the blueprint, copy, paste, boom, and move it over here. I don't want to fiddle around like, oh, how does it fit? Well, do this for every piece. So I created a way that makes it a lot easier. I go to the first segment. I go to the read-only endpoint location. I right-click and hit copy, or an even nicer way to do it is shift-left mouse button. This copies all the values into my memory. And now I go to the piece that I want to align. And I go to transform location, right click, or just shift left mouse button to paste in the values, and boom, it's snapped in nicely. If you find at this stage like pieces that don't really fit together, like here or like here, this is because it's all white box status. It's very dirty meshes, it's not clean, but the logic in the blueprint make sure that once the stuff is arted up properly, it all will fit nicely together. The numbers are right, the visuals not there yet. If you got rotation involved, you can do the same procedure with the rotation values. For now, I want to delete the new piece and focus back on the piece that we initially brought in. Let's go and continue in our custom section. I'm gonna jump over the segments and I'm gonna go to debug. Debug gives us segment numbers. So this is segment number 0, which is displayed due to a big red 0 here. Just always keep in mind, in coding, we start counting always with 0. So piece number 1 would have an index of 0, which brings us directly to our segment section. I'm gonna close this here for OCD. And I open up the index of my segment 0, which is my first and at this point only segment, and I'm gonna look what kind of customization options this blueprint provides us. So first of all, I can cycle through different variations of the pipe itself. We find it here, pipe. There is pipe A, pipe B. Right now there is just a dent, just a visual clue for me. This is now another variant. Again, this is not arted up. It's all placeholder territory. Pipe C, so I can get in nice variations. Okay, the idea is that the whole assembly consists about multiple components that always can be extended. At this stage we got the main pipe, we got the stand, and we got a cable attached to it, and according to the concept there is also an elevated second pipe. So let's have a look how we can play around. Pipe is already sorted. The second pipe can be brought in here. The default value is no second pipe. If I want to have a second pipe, I just select a variant I want to have, and it will be automatically spawned. In this case, when the second pipe segment is spawned, the extension of the bars here will also be spawned. If for any reason I do not want to have this extension here, I can go to extension override and then it will be gone. Vice versa, if I just gonna untick it for the purpose of display. If I have no pipe, but for every reason want to override the automatic logic, should there be an extension or not, I can do the same, and I can bring in stands where there is no pipe. Okay, let's go to the stands. Same game here. I have different variants, 3 at this time. I can cycle through and just get some nice variation in there. All right, talking about the cables, we got dressing cables. Same here, it's getting repetitive. Different variants that I can cycle through. Before we look into the other options, I want to do something quite cool. I want to hit the plus button here, and what it does is it adds another segment. If you've been wondering why is he displaying a big red 0, now it's coming together and start to make sense. I'm gonna add another segment, which is now the second segment. So first, second, third segment. I'm also getting confused with this as well, no worries. And now what I got here in my blueprint, I got 3 entries, and each line reflects one segment, right? So segment 0, index 0, segment 1, index 1, and so on. So what I want to do now is I want to go to my second segment, namely segment number 1, and I can go through all the customization options. What I want to do now is I want to add some scaffolding, so I just enable scaffolding, and boom, here we go. If for any reasons, maybe it might be variation, I want to have it on a different position, I can put in some offset here, let's say, I don't know, 15 meters. And now wrong line, that's why nothing is happening. Dressing, scaffolding, offset, 15 meters, and boom, it's shifted. We also got support beams as a dressing option that are holding the whole thing from the bottom. Same here, I can also do some little offsetting if I want to. The cool thing about the system is whenever we come up with new attachment to the pipes, they can be added here dressing, and they can even give some features and options to it if we want that. Okay, for the sake of clarification or better overview, I'm gonna disable those dressing attachments, and I want to look into this line, which is called transformation mode. So what I want to do is I want to enable the transformation mode for my piece number 1 for this segment here. So I enable transformation mode. Visually not much happens, but under the hood quite a lot happens. What we just did is we transformed this static mesh into a spline mesh component, which gives us cool options, for example curves. So let's have a look. The idea behind the transform mode is that you got again a start point, which is the pivot of the segment, and an end point, which is the point where the segment ends. And when I'm in transform mode, what I can do is I can manipulate the translation of the end point of each segment. So let me show you. First of all, I want to type in offset. Offset is on the y-axis. Maybe also good to remember, in Unreal Engine we always go X forward. This is our orientation. So here would be start point of the segment, here end point, and start point of the next segment, and so on. And accordingly the y-axis is this direction. Hold on, maybe this is better. This is the y direction. So with the offset I can manipulate the y direction. I type in values, it's always in meters. Let's say, I don't know, let's do 60 meters, so it's not 15 again. And boom, not only the stand shifts, but also the geometry of the pipe modifies accordingly. Quite cool. The even cooler part is if I now change my segments, let's say pipe B, then I will have another variation, but I will maintain the bendiness factor of that particular segment. Not only the offset can be manipulated, but also the rotation of the endpoint of that segment. So let's put in a rotation of 10. Boom, we see now there is a rotation. Let's do a bit higher value so we can see it better. Let's put in, I don't know, 55. Boom. Unfortunately, this number is not in degrees. The underlying reason for that is that in order to manipulate this point, I need to work with the tangent handles. Sorry, I'm gonna say it again. The tangent handles of that point. This is what I can manipulate. I am not able within the Unreal Engine in that particular setup to rotate a certain point itself. So I'm gonna use the tangent handle. Therefore, this is not accurate degree values. It's just numbers giving you an idea how much rotation there should be. The higher the value, the higher the rotation. The lower the value, the lower the rotation. And what you can also see, whenever I do a manipulation on the orientation of a segment endpoint, the rest of the assembly will align accordingly. This is that. The next thing I want to show you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another segment, boop, and I'm going to put in some variation. Let's say I go to the last segment and I choose pipe C and I go for no cables. Where is dressing cables? Here we go. Non-cable is gone. Now what I can see is that I have a bit of an ugly end piece here. I want to avoid this, so I go down to caps and I go to caps cables and I select please cap it on start. Pardon, on end, of course. I also get always confused. Again, the idea behind this is we are looking C forward, so this would be the end of the cable, and if I select cap cables start, then it would be the start of the next section. If I want to have it on both sides, well, of course, then I just go down, whoops, wrong list. I go down here and select both, and then I got it capped on both sides. Again, if something is not nicely fitting, this is only white box. The outer dimensions are safe according to level, according to concept. So this is good to work for with level design. But again, all the arting up still needs to be done. This is why it might look visually ugly, but the numbers are correct anyway. So what I can also do, I'm just gonna remove this. What I can also do is I can go here to second pipe, and accordingly to the concept, I can add like a second row of pipes like this. And again, if I wanna cap this piece, it's the same idea, the same logic. Let's say I want to cap it here, so this would be the end point of the section index 2, so I go to 2, go down to cap second pipes and select end. Pardon, I mix it up again. Of course it's gonna be start because it's the start of the third section, and then we got an end piece, or at least a placeholder for an end piece here. Now let's say I want to switch segments. I don't have to go through there and like copy each value hand by hand, each single value or something like that. I could do a right click, copy and paste, so I can copy all over the values. But if I want to switch it, simply as that, I can select the line, move it down here in its position, and then it's swapped. So this is some cool things you can do here. One more thing I want to show you goes as follows. I'm gonna add a new segment. I'm gonna do a little cleanup again, OCD kicking in. So I'm gonna remove this floating piece here. I'm gonna leave the segment for now. What I can do is I can give it another support beam. So I go to index 3 and I go to second pipe extension override, and then it gives me this here. So let's go back to transformation in this third segment. Transformation mode enabled, and what I want to do now is I want to play around with the elevation mode. Let's set this to 14 meters this time, and you can see we automatically get some nice elevation in here. And what you can also see, the ground rubble, the connecting pieces, also the stand, which is now invisible due to rubble, will be auto aligned to the terrain. I'm gonna give you a little demonstration of that. I prepared some terrain here. Let's raise it all up a bit. Let's change this value to, I don't know, let's say 25 meters. Do the same with index number 2. Let's elevate it up to 20 meters, like so. Of course, I need to enable the transformation mode in order to make it happen. You might ask for the reason why do I have to enable it manually. Well, the reason is quite fairly simple. In order to make the transform mode happen, I need to have spline meshes here, and spline meshes just take a little tiny whipsy bipsy more performance than regular static meshes. Nothing to be concerned about, but the idea is if we got like a pipeline that consists of, like, say 100 segments and each of them are in spline mode, then it would be a bit of a waste. So I just have the control here to kill the spline mode where it's not required. Okay, back to the demonstration of the rubble pieces on the bottom. I prepared some little dummy terrain here. So if I now take the whole segment, move it over there, then you can see that the ground segments are automatically aligned to the ground. Zoom in a little bit further so we can see it better. It's all auto-aligned. When working on the trenches, I had massive issues with geometry not being nicely aligned to the ground. Also colliders were a constant pain. So I figured it would be good to have control over the auto alignment, just in case something beneath is fucked up, or we have some, I don't know, special condition that needs to be fulfilled. We just don't want them at the position that are automatically generated. So what we can do is we can go to the stand section and can disable the align auto functionality and then put in a manual value where we want to have it. And as you can see now, I've put it up to 25 meters, which is too much. Let's say 5 meters or minus 5 meters to hide it in the ground. Whatever floats the boat in that particular case. So this is that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all of it. Gonna wrap it up. The whole assembly consists of different segments. Each segment can individually be configured in each according line. When you want to have a new segment, just hit the plus button and you can extend to infinity and beyond. Yay! One last thing we didn't mention so far, it's the line spline mode here. I'm gonna show you what it does. So I'm gonna, in this case, I'm gonna put in a new segment, and within this blueprint, I'm gonna enable the spline mode, enable, bloop. And what happens now is, now we got a full spline mode. So whenever we have special conditions where the rest of the system doesn't hold up, this is an emergency fallback option, right? But whenever we need some bands that we can render with with an end and start and an end tangent, and we need more spline points, then we can use the spline mode. And this is regular, standard Unreal Engine spline editing, nothing to write home about, just the way we're used to it. So I can manipulate spline points in space. I have manual control over tangents, like so. I can add spline points, like so, and I can tinker together some very, very casual pieces in case we need some manual control over the exact curvature of the pipe. And what I can also do is I can toggle a second pipe and I can toggle cables. So I can always check out if I want to have cables and a second pipe as well. Right now this is just the default mesh. Maybe there will be an option to also change it to other variations. For now I wanted to keep the blueprint as simple as possible, and again, for placement in the level design department, it wouldn't matter what the visual particularities about the asset are. It just matters that the dimensions are right. Okay, so this is the spline mode, just to keep in back of your mind. Okay, thank you for taking a look at the MegaPipe tool. It's called BP Swamp Pipes. You can find it into your outliner. You can drag it in, play around. And very last point, if any of you find that interesting, I can only highly urge people to get the head around Blueprint, because it's really, really cool stuff that can be done with Blueprint. It makes life in environment art much easier. It makes the process of composing levels much more efficient, and also it gives you some art direction control. Let's say the terrain will be raised here for whatever reason, then it will just auto align as an example, and you don't have to go and put it in together piece by piece and touch all the single pieces. So in case I raised your interest and you wanna get into a bit of blueprinting, you can always go to my blueprints, open them in the editor, have a look at those blueprints. What I do is I always try to make them as clean as possible, as structured as possible, and also as efficient as possible. So I try to avoid like complicated setups or more nodes, using more nodes that would be required to get the outcome that I want to have. I also put comments on there. So if you want to study this and get an idea what's happening under the hood, you can open up the blueprint, just go here, follow the line from the left to the right, and see what's happening, see what's been done. The way it's structured is there is always like a huge functionality in one box. So for example here, we first set up our construction loop. This loop refers to what if we have multiple pieces. So basically it's setting up the segment structure here with, let's select that one, with all the entries. This is done by a so-called loop encoding. And then for each loop, we configure our segment, and this is split into the pipe itself, which is like the main piece, the heart. We got a little debug functionality. This is the numbers that we saw. Then we are adding our stand, we're adding our second pipe, and we are aligning our extension of the stand. Then we are placing our cables, and then we are placing our scaffolding, we are placing our support beams, and again, many more stuff could be put in here. So it's the same more or less, just copy and paste. And then last but not least, we take care about our caps if there is segments in between missing. One thing might be worth to mention, there is standard nodes, like for example add local offset. This is a standard Unreal Engine Blueprint functionality, but you can always write your own function. You can find them in the list here, and you can double click it, and then you got logic in here. So this is a very cool way in Blueprint if you have functionality that repeats itself, and you don't want to write it all the time new. And if you use variables, then you just copy the function, change the variables, and keep the rest of the logic without rewriting or copy or pasting or whatever. And also, of course, you change the function here. Let's say, I don't know, I put in a note here, then this will also be reflected to the other functions or to the same function you're using on different points in the blueprint. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks a lot, guys. Talk to you later.